Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here tonight. We know that you all could be a lot of different places on Thursday night, but you chose to be here at First Baptist Jackson to talk about ministry to the next generation. As a parent, as a staff member, as a young couple that came here about 11 years ago, just married, we say thank you. Our staff is so grateful for the time that you all put in each and every single week preparing your lessons, writing. We missed you cards, writing happy birthday cards, to going to baseball games, to being president in a child's life. So we thank you for that. We'll share a verse with you tonight before we begin. From Psalm 78, verses 2 through 4. It says this: I will open my mouth with parables. I will utter hidden things from old that we have heard and that our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, His power, and the wonders that He has done. So we look forward in 2018 to telling the next generation what it says here: the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, His power, and the wonders that He has done. We have a lot of great things coming up. Praying for Be Now this weekend. Just asking, we'll pray in just a minute for that. We're looking forward to what the Lord's going to do through Disciple Now. We have Moonlight Madness for our children's ministry coming up, and a lot of neat things for our preschool ministry as well. But most of all, we're thankful for you all being the hands and feet of this ministry. These different ministries, and praise for you all. I have one challenge for you tonight before Dan Scott comes up, and that is to think of in your mind right now, maybe throughout the night, of one family or maybe as many families that you can pray for this year. For 2018, to pray for one family that doesn't come to First Baptist Jackson, that desperately needs to know Jesus Christ, that desperately needs hope, that desperately needs love, forgiveness, and all those things, and a relationship for their children in these ministries. So just think of one family, and we'll expand upon that more throughout this year. But think of one family that you can pray for and invite throughout this time. So I'm going to pray for us, and then Dan Scott, who's with the Orange Curriculum Group. We have a lot of great people from the back table back here. We're so thankful for Mike Clear sharing with us last night. Mike did a phenomenal job right here in the class, just talking about making the most of our time. And we want to be impactful with our ministry on Sundays. We want that to last through Monday through Saturday as well. So we're looking forward to what the Lord is going to do to that. So let's pray real quick. Gracious Heavenly Father God, I thank you for tonight. I thank you for each and every single person in this room, and just the investment of hours upon hours to train up little ones in your word, God. To train them in your scripture, and to show them the way of everlasting through a personal relationship with you, Jesus Christ. But I thank you for what you're doing in these ministries, Lord. We lift up Be Now. We pray for those students. They're going to be coming through these doors. Whether they know you or not, maybe they need to go deeper. Maybe they need a personal relationship with you, God. Maybe their family needs to know about you, God. We pray for Mallory. We lift her and her leadership up, lift her leadership team up as they minister to these students, and just praying for fruitful times throughout this weekend, God. We pray for upper basketball. There's 350 kids that are going to be coming in the gym with their families, God. We pray for stories to be shared, for laughter to be shared. We pray for you to be shared in that gymnasium, God. Just pray for this calendar year that comes up, that you would be glorified in all things that we do throughout this year, God. Just give you all the glory tonight, and may it be all about you. And we pray. So Dan comes up. After he shares tonight, we're actually going to go to our breakout groups. So preschool, we'll go to the preschool. The children's ministry, we'll go to the 5th floor main section. And then if you're involved with student ministry, you'll stay in here. Dan?
Good evening. How are y'all doing tonight? Great. Good. I am having a great time. This is my first time in the great state of Mississippi. It's a great state. I grew up in New Jersey, outside of Manhattan. It's different than Mississippi. But I live in Georgia now, and I am the curriculum director for 252 Kids and 252 Street Team. We just have a really great time. I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about something super important, something that we love talking about. And it's this idea of it's just a phase, so don't miss it. So if we ask the question, why are we here? Why do we do what we do? Why do we turn on the lights? Why do we show up? What would you say? What would you say?
Teach children.
Teach children. All right.
Love kids to Jesus.
Love kids to Jesus. I love it. Yeah, another way that we could say that, if this works, is we want every kid to grow up and experience God's unconditional love and forgiveness. Like that is why we turn on lights. That is why we get up in the morning. That is why we, I was a children's pastor for 8 years, and we had Saturday night services. And at noon, my wife would come to me and she'd be like, "Oh, you're in church mode. Might as well just go to church." That's why we did it, right? Because we want kids to know Jesus. We want them to experience that God loves them so very much. But how do we do that? Well, on your tables, you have some circles. You have yellow circles, you have red circles. And those colors mean something to our organization. Orange, right? 2 colors make up orange, red and yellow. And I don't know if you know this, so I'm just going to give you a little primer on what orange is all about. But red symbolizes the heart of the family, right? The moments that happen between a mom or a dad or a caregiver and whatever that family looks like, the heart, the red of the family. Then yellow is the light of the church. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. And the church should do the best job a church can do, and the family needs to do the best job a family can do to influence their kids in faith. But we believe that 2 combined influences are better than 2 influences acting alone. 2 is greater than 1 plus 1. And that is why red and yellow, well, they need to get together and they create orange. And that is why we do what we do, because you as a church, you have 40 hours a year with a child, at most. That's the average. In my church, where I was at in Michigan, we figured out the average amount of time that we have with a child is actually 25 hours, based on our attendance patterns. 25 hours, that's nothing. You watch more Netflix than a child is at church. But a parent has exponentially greater amount of time. 3,000 hours. So as the church, you can leverage your 40 hours to help a parent make the most of their 3,000 hours. And that's where orange comes in. But we only have so much time. I think Mike probably alluded to this last night. We have this jar of marbles here. We have 936 weeks from the time a child is born to the time they leave our house and head out to college. I have this Parent Cue app. We put this is an orange product. I open it up and I see my son. He's my oldest. He's in 9th grade. And it tells me that I have 185 weeks until he leaves my house. It'd be hard, right? Because you're seeing how much time you have left before they head out. And then I scan over to my daughter, and I have 289 weeks. My next daughter, and I have 341 weeks. And my youngest son, and I have 445 weeks. And then I start crying maybe a little bit. I don't know. But here's the thing. When we realize how much time we have left, we make the most of the time we have now. Because when we can visualize it, the Psalm tells us to number our days. When we can visualize them and know, oh, I have 185 weeks left with Liam, well, I better get it in gear and make sure I spend the most quality time I possibly can with my son before I have different sort of influence when he's out of the house. And that's why we have this idea of phase. Because each week happens, but each week happens differently. See, phase is defined like this: a time frame in a kid's life when you can leverage distinctive opportunities to influence their future. So a preschooler needs something different than an elementary kid needs. Elementary needs something different tane a 7th grader, which needs something different than a 10th grader, who needs something different than a 12th grader. And in every phase, there's a way that we can lean into a child and speak about God's unconditional love and forgiveness. We can talk about Jesus, but how we do that changes over time because of how kids change over time. Now, which phase do you think is the most important? Who works with preschoolers in this room? Raise your hand. Who works with preschoolers? Yeah, I remember that phase. And then I realized I could never be a preschool volunteer. This is not my skill set. I could not wait until my kids were out of that phase. How about elementary? Who works with elementary in here? Yeah. I studied elementary education. I was a 6th grade teacher for a year, and I retired. And I went into the church, because it's the same. I loved doing that, but I was an elementary pastor. And absolutely loved that phase of ministry. Who works with 6th, 7th, or 7th and 8th graders? You were, yeah? I have 2 of those in my house right now. That's crazy. And then high schoolers. Anyone work with high schoolers? Awesome. All right, so out of those 4 phases, which one's the most important? Tell me. I think I heard it. All of them. Yes. The phases that matter most are the phases that are happening right now. So for my son, Liam, who's in 9th grade, that is the most important phase in his life, because that is the phase he is navigating right now. But for my youngest, who's in 4th grade, that's his most important phase. And we need to treat these phases like they are the most important phase in a child's life, because there are certain things that we can do to make sure that they hear what we're saying. But you know what's also true is this. The phases that matter most are the phases that happen before and after this phase. Here's why. If you work with 1st graders, it's important that you know what kindergartners are like. Because at the beginning of the year, that 1st grader acts way more like a kindergartner than they do a 1st grader. And if you work with 6th grade and you know that in a few short months they're going to be headed off into student ministry, you need to know what is expected of them as a 7th and 8th grader so you can do a proper handoff and they know exactly how to succeed as a 7th grader in your ministry. But when it comes to what we do and how we work with kids, adults, we make a couple of assumptions. And the first one is this. The first one is we assume that they are like me now. That how I think as a 41-year-old man is how this child thinks as a 10-year-old boy. That's not true. Did you know that when we learn something new, we attach it to what we already know? So if I hear a story, let's say Zacchaeus, this is a familiar story, read it to Madam Zee. I've heard that story like a million times. And I also know about tax collectors, I know about U.S. taxation, the U.S. tax system. I can picture Zacchaeus because I'm an adult and I know about taxes. This child doesn't know about those things. And so I need to help him understand some things so he can understand why it was so scandalous that Jesus went up and talked to him and loved him and invited himself over for a party. The other thing that we tend to assume is that they are like we used to be. That my 10-year-old is exactly like I was when I was 10. Except that's not true either. When I was born a while ago, a supercomputer fit, into a room roughly like this size, and it didn't take pictures, and it didn't connect to the world. It didn't give me any information that I wanted to understand if I just talked to it. And in 2007, we got this. Now we have a supercomputer in the palm of our hands. Our 10-year-olds that are turning 11 this year were born the year the iPhone was released to the world. And since then, the world has exponentially changed. Much more is possible. A child can speak to a device on their table, in their house, and find out anything they want to about anything, Alexa.
Siri. And we're like, make sure that you bring your commentaries. I don't need a commentary. Siri, find out, what does it mean to da-da-da-da-da-da? They're growing up in a completely different world than we are, and they are experiencing it in a completely different way. They are not how we used to be, they are how they are. And the more we understand about how they are, the better we can communicate God's truth to them. So kids are changing in 6 ways over time. Cool. All 6 are up there. All right, so they're changing in these 6 ways. Physically and mentally. Okay, those things, those make sense, right? So a child is born, they're born. They're little, they're tiny, they're blobs. And they're cute, but they're blobs, right? And then they grow, and they grow, and they keep growing, and it's sort of a linear trajectory, right? And then if something is not growing the way you expect it to, then you start to question, are they, developing on time? And that is an indicator that something is either wrong or great or good or fabulous. And they're changing mentally over time. The way they understand the world around them changes over time. A 2-year-old, their brains are absolutely crazy at 2 years old. Think about what happens from the time that they're 18 months, 2 years old to 5. They go from saying 1 or 2 words to saying sentences and paragraphs and singing songs and skipping and doing all of these crazy things. The way kids change mentally over time, that 11-year-old that you're ready to strangle in the back of the elementary room, not that you'd ever do that. You know why they're like that? Because their brain is doing the same thing that 2-year-old's brain is doing. Except now they can talk back to you. And they can run away, and they're taller than you, and they're stronger, and it's really hard. But when you understand that, they're forgetting things that they learned last week, yeah. Because mentally they're changing, and their brain is getting ready for adulthood. And it needs to do certain things, and it's changing over time. Kids also change culturally and relationally. These are the things that are sort of happening around them and the way they see relationships. So culturally, lots of things change. For an infant, a cultural change, especially if they're growing up in the church, is childcare. It's a nursery. That is a big cultural shift. I'm going from this nice warm family to a stranger who I may or may not know, going into a nursery. Kindergarten is a huge cultural shift. All of a sudden, you are no longer the center of attention. You are one of 26 kids in a room. That is a cultural shift. Puberty is a huge cultural shift. Even though it's a physical change, what it does to their community, it really impacts how they relate to each other, how they experience the world around them. Driver's license, that is a cultural shift. That is a cultural change, that all of a sudden they have freedom to move. And along the way, kids are changing culturally over time. They change relationally. Preschoolers are the most egotistical people on the planet. It is all about them all the time, and I don't know why they don't understand. But I mean that in the best possible way, right? Because that's just where they are. They could be literally playing at the same sand table, with someone, and they're like, playing at the same sand table. And they never make eye contact, and they never acknowledge the other person's hand. Because that is literally how they perceive the world. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey guys, look. And you're like, oh. And then they start playing together. But you have to cue them to the fact that there are other people in the world. It's really funny. And then as they get older, and then really relational changes when those hormones kick in, they're like, oh, that's, yeah. And you're like, get away. You're like, no, I don't think you need to be in the same small group anymore. No, let's not do that anymore. Relationally, things change. Now the next 2, emotional and moral changes. They're tricky. Because the others are sort of linear. Right? Physical changes, they're linear. You don't have teeth, you get teeth, your teeth fall out, you get more teeth, you get braces, you get your wisdom teeth out, and you fall out, and get dentures. There's a trajectory for the teeth. But with emotional and moral changes, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. you think that they're the best kid, and then they go off to middle school and they meet the worst kid, and then all of a sudden they're the worst kid, and you're like, what happened to you? And you question everything. Or like that senior who's like, oh, the president of the youth group, and then he goes and joins a frat club, and you're like, oh, what happened to you? Why are you on the news right now? Oh, not for something good. And you're like, what happened? It's because moral and emotional changes are not linear. They're cyclical, they're up and they're down, and they're twisting and they're turning, but they happen. And if we're aware of that, they happen, we can speak to them and influence the cultural changes to influence the emotional and moral changes. Because trauma, supercharged affects an emotional and moral development. If a kid experiences something rough, it is going, like they could get stuck in that place, just emotionally. Like if a child that goes through a really, really messy divorce, as let's just say a 12-year-old, they may be stuck in that as a 12-year-old for years until they work through that and get to an emotionally safe place. And that these are just things that we need to know so we can approach everyone with grace and truth and really speak in a way that they understand. So, if we are going to do that, if we are going to speak in a way that they understand, we need to do something. We need to read kids' minds. We need to read their minds so every kid can know they can win. So let's start with preschoolers. All right, preschoolers, are you ready? Those of you that work with preschoolers, pay super close attention. Preschoolers think like artists. There they are. Artists. What are artists? They get messy, don't they? They love to manipulate their world, paint and color and imagination, and that is what a preschooler is doing. They are seeing the world for the first time. And for infants, especially birth through 2, everything is experienced through the senses. So let's say the first time you go to a major city, right? And you go, like this is, let's just say you go into Times Square, New York City, first time. And there's all the sights and all the sounds and all the lights and all the honking and like cars. And you're just like, you're completely overwhelmed by it all. That is literally every moment of a baby's life. It's like that moment, like when they literally come out and then like there's the lights and they just got smacked so they can breathe, and then there's the suction, and then there's the, they're crying, and there's all this stuff happening, and they're crying, and you're like, why are you crying? And you're like, because the world is insane. Get me back. Like, this is crazy. And then we send them off into the world where it's still crazy. Every new person, every new smell, every new sight, every new sound, they're experiencing like for the first time. I mean, for preschoolers, learning is a full body experience. It is. And it's why when we create preschool curriculum, we like it to be messy, because if it's not messy, kids aren't learning. And I know that drives your facility people crazy. And I don't apologize for it. I mean, maybe I'll apologize for it, but maybe I'll get a gift card. Okay, and then we'll talk about it. I hate glitter. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It is the devil's, candy. I hate it. But kids love it. And they love it so much. And they want to like get it all over them, and they want to get it messy. And you're like, why are you messy? You're like, well, because they're learning. And this is how they learn. This is how they learn to eat. This is how they learn to draw. This is how they learn to color. This is how, it is a full body experience. And it's just what they do. And along the way, though, as they're learning, as we're reading their minds, we have to understand that kids are going through these changes. We talked about this, these cultural changes. And so the cultural change at the beginning is birth. Like you're like this, like I just talked about, like it's just a nice, quiet environment where it's like nice and warm and cozy, and then all of a sudden it's not like at all anymore for the rest of your life. And birth is a cultural crisis for this infant, right? And they're asking the question, am I safe? Am I safe? is the world that I'm experiencing right now, that I can't speak about, that I can only cry about and coo about and like Google my eyes about, is it safe? And what we need to do in those moments when they're asking those questions is we need to establish trust. I didn't volunteer in preschool too often, but because I had, infants, I did my time in the nursery. You just do it, right? I just remember like those parents like dropping their kids off for the first time. And they're there and they're like, should we? Like, do you really? Yeah, I would love to go to church and not have to worry about feeding the baby. That'd be awesome. Can we please drop them off right now? But they're apprehensive. And the baby, you can tell the baby's kind of apprehensive. Because remember, they do everything through the senses. So you drop that baby off. There's a new person touching them with a new smell, a new sounding voice, a new room with different lights. And they cry a little bit. Maybe they cry a lot bit. But then you get settled. Okay, great. You go to church. Then the next week, you drop them off. But there's someone new taking them. New sound, new smell, new voice, new way of touch, new thing. Everything is new. So the baby cries. Right? Baby cries a lot. Maybe they cry so much that they just decide, I'm not going to go to church. Let's try again next week. Another new nursery worker with another new smell, another new sound, and the baby cries and cries. And finally, the parents are like, you know what? Forget it. I just can't keep doing this to my child. So what if establishing trust in your nursery meant you had an every week volunteer who is establishing trust with an infant and showing them that the church is the most trustworthy place that I can be. And you're giving them a foundation of what it means to be part of the body of Christ. For 1 and 2-year-olds, we're talking about new abilities. They can walk, maybe they can jump, they're learning to skip. Maybe they're doing it very well. Maybe they're falling every so often. And they are wondering, am I able? And what you're doing in these moments is you're helping them develop some confidence. I remember when my kids were starting to walk, and you'd get down, right, and you'd be literally 2 feet away. You can do it. I know you can do it. And you're just cheering them on the whole time. That is literally your posture with 1 and 2-year-olds. You can do it. Come on, you can do it. I know you can. You can sing this song. You can dance to this music. You can do these things. You can do it. I think exclamation points are a preschooler's love language. It is just all yeah. But not too loud or they'll cry. So there's a balance. But you are helping them develop confidence all along the way. For those 3 and 4-year-olds, they're learning boundaries because now that they can do things, now they want to do all the things. Like go and climb this and get to the marbles. And so the marbles, and then they fall, and then they break, and then this whole thing falls over, and they're crying, and then you're mad, and then they're like, oh, am I okay? Because I don't think I'm okay anymore. Because you're mad at me. You're yelling. You're giving me a consequence. But boundaries are important. We need to establish boundaries. We can't have a free-for-all in the world. That's just not, but this is where the kids are starting to figure out that they can't do all the things all the time. That, climbing a bookcase while fun is not really okay. And when they're doing this, we need to help them cultivate self-control. So by giving them boundaries, we're not just giving them boundaries for the sake of boundaries. We're training them that self-control is just part of what it means to be a human being. Right? And this happens at church, this happens at home, this happens if they're in a preschool somewhere. This is just this phase of life. As they're figuring out, am I okay, you're setting boundaries. And within those boundaries, they have lots of freedom. But there is a boundary. And you're constantly letting them know that even when they cross the line, you're not shaming them for crossing the boundary. You still love them, and you still let them know that they are okay, that we are okay. Our relationship is still solid. But you can't climb on that really anymore. We're going to have to, I don't know, do something really bad. I don't know. But you do. You constantly are letting them know that they're okay. So let's move to elementary. Elementary. They think like scientists. their imaginations. So kids at this age, they still have a super active imagination. And it causes them to have lots of questions about their world. And the way that they can answer those questions is through concrete evidence. See, kids at this age are concrete thinkers, which means that they understand the most literal translation of what you just said. Hey, we're going to the ice cream store around the corner. And the kindergartner runs over to the corner, goes around, and says, there's no ice cream store there. You're like, well, no, like I meant like down the block, like we have to get in a car. Like, why did you say that? It's like 3 blocks away. Because they're thinking the most literal translation of what you just said. Would you like to invite Jesus into your heart? No. Do I swallow Jesus? Do I have to have an operation to get Jesus into my heart? Does he like Pop-Tarts? I just have Pop-Tarts. You need to remember that they're concrete thinkers, and they're thinking literally about what we say. Would you like to trust Jesus with your entire life? Would you like, yes, I trust my parents, I trust this chair, I trust these things, yes. I would like to trust Jesus with everything in my life. And along the way, they have some crisis too. They are wondering, they go through school. We talked about this, kindergarten, first graders, they're at school. For the first time, they're realizing that they're not the center of attention. And they're wondering, do I have your attention? Do I have your attention? This is like, look at me, look what I can do, look what I can do. I can read now. I can skip now, I can hop, I can shoot this basketball, look at me, do I have your attention? And for small group leaders, this can be exhausting. But along the way, you're doing this because you're helping them sort of improve their ability. You're helping them understand that they can do things, and that you do have their attention, and you do want them to know what's happening. In second and third grade, it's comparison. They're learning how to compare two different words. Oh, sorry about that. They are learning how to compare and contrast different things in life, right? And they're starting to do that with people. They're starting to see that, like, you're good at things and you're not good at things, or I'm good at this and you're not good at that. This broke. It like snapped apart. So I'm going to need someone to just click a slide, if that's okay. Mike is doing it. I'm sorry. Thank you for doing that. And they're wondering if they have what it takes. Like, if I'm not good at basketball, are you still going to like me? Like, is that okay? Are you going to try to put it back together? Thank you so much. It's like really close. And you're doing this to broaden their confidence. And to help them see, like, this is what classrooms do, this is what parents do, this is why you try different sports at this age of the game, because you're trying to see, like, what are they really good at, what do we want them to do. Then in 4th and 5th grade, the crisis is friendship. Because for the first time, they're really seeing, like, oh, there are lots of people in the world, and I don't get along with all of them. And so the question that they're asking is literally, do I have friends? Do people accept me for me? Do they like what I like? And what we get to do is we get to help them develop friendships, which is really cool. Because they can learn that when they go to church, church is always a place where they have a friend. That's what small group can be about. It can be that place where they realize, oh yeah, someone likes me. Someone wants me to be there. So now we move on to middle school. And middle schoolers think like engineers. And the difference between thinking like a scientist and thinking like an engineer is exactly what this is doing. It's all the lines and the arrows. It's basically being able to connect the dots. Being able to take information learned here and information learned here and see how they fit together. That's what engineers do. That's how you get a building or a skyscraper. You take this information, you put this information, you do this. So, when they're little, they learn this verse. Be joyful all the time, right? That is what Paul says, right? They love it. They learn that verse. I can rejoice always, and again I say rejoice. And then they learn that they're not joyful all the time. And then they learn that Paul was in prison when Paul wrote that verse. And they're like, wait, joy doesn't have to do with my circumstances, but has something to do with my trust in God. Oh, they get to make those connections themselves. So as we keep moving, sixth graders have a crisis. Their crisis is puberty. Actually, the average age for puberty is 10 years old for girls and 11 years old for boys, which gets really, really tricky. But in sixth grade, it really ramps up. And in the middle of that, they are wondering, who do I like and who likes me? And some of that is the boy-girl thing, like the hormones. But some of it is just, oh, my life is just completely different now. And am I who I was, or do the people that I hang around with now, are they still the people I want to hang around with? Like, are they the people that I'm going to hang around with next year? Like, who is worth my time? And what we're doing during this phase is we are helping them gain some stability. Because puberty is a roller coaster. It is a roller coaster, right? If you've had kids, I mean, this is my house right now. It is literally ups and downs every single day. And we can help them gain stability by when they show up, we are going to accept them for who they are, where they are, no matter what. For 7th and 8th graders, it's a little different. They're learning self-awareness. I'm seeing this firsthand at home. As my daughter, she came to me and she's like, I think I want to quit piano. We're like, oh my word, like, you love music. Why do you want to quit piano? Well, I want to be a singer-songwriter. And she wants me to be a concert pianist. I think I learned all that I need to know. And so for that part, for what I need of piano, I've learned it. Can I learn this and this? Can I take guitar lessons or whatever? She had this like self-awareness of this. But really, this is the crisis of this phase, because they're asking the question, who am I? Am I really going to be a sports kid? Am I really going to be the choir kid? Am I really going to be the sciencey nerd person? And is this who I'm going to be? They're making those decisions now, and we can help them acknowledge their strengths and to help them develop their uniqueness, to help them be confident in who God made them and how God made them and how they get to express that to the world. It's a cool time for small group leaders as they help their kids navigate this in middle school. Those high schoolers, they think completely different. They think like philosophers. See, philosophers are asking the hard questions about life. The things that you can't see, the things that you can't touch. It's like, why am I here? All those existential questions that we have as teenagers and young adults. What am I here for? And they do this by processing it out loud. And you're like, why are you saying that? Like, why is that coming out of your mouth right now? That just sounds crazy talk. This is them processing their faith. And they're just learning how to verbalize it. And if we say, oh, don't say that, that's heresy, we like shut something off, shut something down that they need to process. They have to go through the tension. We had to go through the tension of faith in order to come out on the other side as authentic believers. They are doing that for the first time. And we have to help them navigate it, and we can't let them hang in the balance. 9th grade is a crucial year. High school is one of the most stressful things that will happen to a person. For 9th grade girls, by this time, most of them are through puberty, they are mature. For 9th grade boys, some of them are through puberty and mature, some of them are not. There are school districts where 9th grades are by themselves, so 9th grade girls don't get preyed upon by senior boys. And if they can get through 9th grade not pregnant, there's a really good chance that they'll graduate not pregnant. It is amazing. The 9th grade year is a crucial year in the life of a child. And they're asking this question, where do I belong? Out of all the different clubs I can join, out of all the different things I can do, where do I belong? And what we can do is we can help them value community. It's really important that they value community because of what's about to happen. We need them to know that the people that they're hanging out with in small group are some of the most important people that they should care about. And they should value them, and they should prioritize them, because in 10th grade, they get some freedom. And that's the cultural crisis. They get a driver's license. And so now, they can drive to youth group, or they can drive to the movies. And some of them are just electing to go to the movies. But let's be honest. The car keys just give them access. They've already checked out. So how we handle them as 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, 9th graders, 5th graders, 6th graders, that transition is so important. They're asking, why should I believe? Or why can't I believe? Is this my faith, or is this just my parents' faith? And what we can do is this. We can listen and ask questions and help them clarify some values. We can help them during the 10th grade year figure out a lot of crucial things about their life and about what they believe about faith. Because by this time, they are full-blown abstract thinkers. They are absolutely thinking philosophically about the world. And some of those questions scare them. Because it's like they're deconstructing everything that they knew about life. And we can help them clarify some of that. In 9th grade, in 11th grade, they get pressure. They're about to go to college. Everyone is looking at them. Where are you going to go to school? What are you doing? Did you take your SATs yet? Take your ACTs yet? Where are you going? What are you doing? Are you going to choose your major? Or are you going to go in undeclared? You shouldn't go in undeclared. You should absolutely choose major. And they're like, wait, I'm 16 years old. But there is so much pressure, and they're wondering, with what I want to do with my life, how can I matter? How can I do something that is important? And what we can do in this time is give them leadership opportunities, service opportunities, where they can really hone those skills, when we can really provide them an opportunity to refine who they are and what they're going to be about for the rest of their lives. Now, granted, things will change. But I know decisions I made in 11th and 12th grade, I am still that person today. Right? You probably would say some of the same things. And in 12th grade, they graduate. And they're wondering, what will I do? Will I go to college? Will I do a trade? What will I do? And what we get to do as senior leaders of seniors is help give them a vision for their future. So they're not exiting our rooms, our environments, our church aimless. They have a purpose. And see, that's where you come in. We have this graphic that we have in the book where the mental and physical changes collide with the cultural changes and create the crisis that we talked about. But the umbrella is you. Because the buffer in every crisis is love. How you love a preschooler, how you love an elementary student, how you love a middle schooler and a high schooler matters. And that's why we're here. So you can think about the things you can do, even this weekend, that will influence the way a child sees God and sees themselves in light of how God made them. Thanks so much for your attention. We're about to head to the next thing. Are you going to come up, or are they just going? Head out. Do they know where they're going? Do you know where you're going? Preschool? Okay, great. Thank you so much.